Thanks for listening to the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, here to help educate, motivate, and put you on the right path to take control of your health through weekly discussions on topics in the medical field, public health arena, and in your community. And now your host, Dr. Barry.
And welcome to another episode of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry. I'm your host, Dr. Davis-Pierre, your favorite board-certified internist, founder of drdavis-pierre.com and PR Medical Consulting, helping you empower yourself for better health with the #1 podcast for patient advocacy. This week, we bring you a special guest. She's actually a 3-time guest here on the podcast, Maria Davis-Pierre. She is the CEO of Autism in Black, and she is America's #1 autism advocate for Black families. And we're going to be talking about Autism Awareness Month, and as well as her company, Autism in Black, and why the need to focus on Black families. So get ready for another amazing episode. Like always, if you have not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Leave me a 5-star review and leave Maria a 5-star review letting her know how well she did on the podcast. Your support is so much appreciated. You guys have a great and blessed day. This episode is brought to you by the Lunch and Learn Community Store, where we are living out the motto, empower yourself for better health. In the Lunch and Learn Community Store, you can get your favorite t-shirts, ebooks, as well as other related products by Dr. Barry. Head over to shop.drpiersblog.com and get a chance to get 10% off your first purchase by using the coupon code EMPOWER10. Again, shop.drpiersblog.com. Live out the motto, empower yourself for better health. All right, listener community, you just heard another amazing intro from today's guest. She is almost like a regular on the podcast. I think this is going to be her 3rd episode here on the podcast, and I figure what better month than to bring it for Autism Awareness Month, to bring Maria Davis-Pierre, who, of course, you know is my wife, but also the CEO of Autism in Black, and she's going to tell you a lot about that. We're going to catch up a lot of people on just what autism is, kind of get her take on it. We're going to kind of pick her brain on today's show. So again, Maria, thank you for joining the podcast again.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, yes. So again, for those who this may be their first time, listening to the podcast, and if this is your first time listening, make sure you subscribe and leave a 5-star review, especially if Maria does a good job, right? So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, or this is your 3rd time listening to Maria on the podcast, Maria, can you tell a little bit about yourself, just something that wasn't in the bio, but something that people need to know?
So I am a therapist in South Florida. I own Autism in Black, and Autism in Black is all about bringing awareness to the Black community when it comes to autism. So we support Black parents who have autistic children. We also train professionals, healthcare professionals, on being culturally competent when it comes to the Black disability community. And of course, we have a 6-year-old who is autistic, a 6-year-old little girl. So that is what started the road to Autism in Black, I will say, is her.
Perfect. So just for those who, may not know what, the month of April is to a lot of people here around the world, can you kind of give them a little glimpse of what actually is autism, and, why does it need a whole month?
So autism is a neurological disorder that is characterized by difficulties with communication, difficulties with social skills, sensory, and things like that. So a parent may notice that their child is not speaking or has a regression in speech. They may notice their child is doing repetitive behaviors. And they may see that their child has a reaction to certain smells, textures, lights, sounds, things like that. And why I think it needs a whole month of being dedicated to awareness and acceptance is because, especially in the Black community, we're still people still don't know what autism is. So we have to shed light on what autism is and how it affects us as families and the actual individuals who are autistic. So I think, that's why there's a whole month dedicated to it for those who are not directly impacted by it. Because for those who are directly impacted by it, we know that for us, it's 365. But during the month of April, we amp it up 10 times more just to spread that awareness so people can be aware of autism autism and what it is and how it affects us, so they can be supportive, so that, they can be inclusive, and things like that.
So I know when you kind of talk a little bit about, awareness and kind of being aware of, seeing someone who's autistic that you may not realize it. Are there certain and common issues or concerns or behavioral problems that you tend to see that may spark someone to say, hey, you know what? I may need to think about autism as a diagnosis?
When it comes to healthcare professionals?
Mm-hmm. And then, we're not even really healthcare professionals, because most of the lunch learning community, I would love to say they're healthcare professionals, but no, a lot of times they're just, regular people just trying to, better themselves and get healthier and empower themselves with some knowledge.
So I would say that there is not going to be one tell sign that is going to, notify someone that the person is autistic. Autism is a spectrum disorder. So what that means is that it's, not a linear thing. It affects everybody differently, and no two people are the same. So why I can say for my child, you may notice sensory things with her repeating certain words that you're saying to her. Not every person who is autistic may have those things. So I would just say, when you're with anybody, to make sure that you are being kind and being inclusive, regardless of what you're noticing with them. All
right. And I know you kind of touched a little bit on it, because I know a lot of times when you hear, oh, my son is autistic, my daughter's autistic, that's not like a one size fit all thing. When we talk about autism, you didn't kind of mention it as a spectrum disorder. Like, what are some of the varieties or the way it varies from one end to the other?
I mean, it's many different ways. In the professional world, they have terms like high functioning and lower functioning autism. So your higher functioning is what would be Asperger's, even though the term Asperger's is not used anymore. But I know a lot of people may be familiar with the term Asperger's. So that would be, if anybody's watched Parenthood or they watch The Good Doctor, that would be somebody who would be considered higher functioning Asperger's. And then there's the lower functioning type that may need more assistance with independent living skills, may not be able to verbally communicate, may need to use other means of communication. So things like that.
Okay, that's interesting. And this is something that, especially from the various skills and various spectrum of the disorder, this is something that they tend to pick up early. Like, when they're young, you can kind of see where one person is leaning one way or the other.
As far as higher functioning or lower functioning? Mm-hmm. No, I don't think that you would be able to pick on that as they're younger, because if they're, as I always say, early intervention is key. For instance, with our daughter, professionals said she wasn't going to talk. We got her interventions early, and now she talks all the time. So I think, with the right tools and early intervention and the services, that, you're not able to predict whether they'll be higher functioning or lower functioning, because things change daily for a person who is autistic. They may pick up a skill tomorrow. So I don't think that we're able to definitely say if a person is higher functioning or lower functioning. I personally don't like the terms higher functioning or lower functioning, because a person can be considered higher functioning and still have traits of someone who is considered lower functioning, which is why we use the term spectrum.
Okay, interesting. All right. So, obviously this was a question that I'm pretty sure you've had to answer a million times over. When we talk about autism and autism spectrum, and, parents come to you and they ask you these questions, they always say, like, what did I do? Like, what was the cause that caused my child to become autistic? Like, is there any definitive causes that have been shown to be causative factor for autism?
As of right now, it's still kind of a gray area. There is no definitive cause to say that your child will be autistic. We're looking at more of environmental factors, any trauma the mother may have had while carrying the child. Genetics play a factor. So there's many things that could play a factor in your child being autistic. But we do know that vaccines do not cause autism. So that has been something that has been
disputed and kicked down. And it's almost mind-boggling in the lunch learning community, the amount of times I have to educate people on the fact that the one study that they point to and say, yes, vaccines cause autism, there's been like 20 that say, no, it doesn't, but no one seems to read the 20 or talk about the 20. They seem to only talk about the one that we've already been shown
shown to be false and, lies associated with it. So it's very interesting. And of course, I think that's a question that all autism parents get. I think that's a question that all care workers who take care of kids who are autistic receive. Like, was there something I did versus, was it a drink? Was it a medication? Was it a vac? Whatever. They're always looking for some way to point a finger and say, okay, that's how my child got autistic. And I'm not sure if it's more, and I'm not sure you're in your line of work, if you've seen it, if it's more to try to remove some of the burden often, because maybe they feel like a burden that their child's autistic, or what? Like, what would you say?
Necessarily say the word burden. I think burden is a trigger word for most autism parents and autistic individuals. I think trying to find an answer is something that we all look for when it comes to being a therapist. When people have red flags and signs and symptoms of most any diagnosis, and they get the diagnosis, they have an answer to, the way they're feeling. With autism, it's just so much gray area. And, that people want an answer. They want to know why, and we can't give them a reason why. It also takes away some of the shame and the guilt that goes along with being a parent to an autistic child, because you feel a lot of the shame and the guilt. Like, what did I do wrong? As you were saying, did I eat something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Maybe I shouldn't have, rode on this bike at that one time, things like that. So having a definitive answer can kind of ease that shame and guilt that you feel as a parent, because, a lot of times we watch the struggles that our children go through and how people perceive our children. And that's something that we're constantly trying to battle and bring awareness and inclusion and acceptance to. So I think that is what it boils down to.
Okay. And especially, and you talk, and it's a good lead in, right? Because you talk about acceptance. So you kind of figure that, like, my child's autistic, I'm doing what I can, but there's clearly a void that's needed, and there was no one calling. So you picked up the call and said, okay, I'll take this mantle and, I'll start an organization like Autism in Black. What were some of the motivating factors behind it, and what help keeps you going?
I think for me, having professionals come into my home and never taking our culture into consideration, thinking that their cookie cutter approaches were just going to apply to us as a family, when culture is so big to us as, African Americans, as Caribbean individuals. It's kind of what we hold on to. And we all know that our culture can affect any treatment outcome. So if you're just trying to apply the same interventions across the board without taking culture into consideration, it's more than likely not going to be successful. So having the same professionals come in and not take that into consideration, and seeing it that it just wasn't with me, that it was with other parents who have autistic children, seeing that they didn't take us into consideration as parents, as individuals who are with our children a lot more than they are, and not to talk to us or consider us. So those were the two motivating forces in starting Autism in Black and starting something for Black parents. Because anytime you look up autism, you're not seeing faces that look like you. So to see somebody who looks like you, who understands not only the professional but the personal side of it, is what keeps me going.
Love it. And when did you start this company? How long has it been around? And what's your plans? What's the end goal?
So it's officially been its own business for a little over a year. I officially started it last January, but I had been doing the work in my other private practice. I just separated it officially in January. I think the next plans for Autism in Black is most definitely to expand. We definitely are trying to open a wellness center, open summer camps for children, and, continue to spread awareness, acceptance, and inclusion.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So when someone says, hey, you know what, I think my child may be autistic, or maybe they're already diagnosed with autism, but I'm still having trouble kind of navigating the system, what are some of the services that you offer?
So I offer parents coaching. That is for any parent who has an autistic child, no matter where they are on their autism journey, and they're looking for, how do I navigate the school system, or, what resources are out there for me, or how do I set up goals for my child? I also do couples coaching because, as we know, having a child with a special need or a disability can definitely impact your relationship. So I also do couples coaching to help you kind of set the foundation again and get back on the same page. I offer IEP services. Any autism parent caregiver will let you know that the IEP is so important. It is something that they get from K through 12. It's the individualized education plan. It has a list of goals that the child works on annually for that school year, and it's a legal document. It's the most important document they have from K through 12. So I offer IEP reviews to make sure that your child's IEP is set up for them and who they are currently, and it's realistic for them. I also do trainings on what autism is and how to speak to your family about what autism is, how to set boundaries with your family regarding your child's autism, because we know a lot of times that families don't quite understand, and it's hard for us to set those boundaries with families. So those are some of the services that Autism in Black offers.
Now, have you found it difficult working with families whose child is autistic in terms of not only helping to either create or mend a relationship between the parent and child, but also help mend the relationship that may be, pulled away from in regards to the parents?
I don't think so. I think that being a parent myself, I kind of already have an upper hand in it. So not just having the professional side of it, but the personal side of it, being able to know exactly what they're talking about gives me kind of an upper hand in the interventions and the skills and tools that I use in sessions. So I think that for us as therapists, we have a certain sense, dealing with resistance or dealing with things that come up. So I think for us, it's not more of, is it difficult? It's just, we'll get there when we get there type of thing. The goals will be accomplished.
And before we let you go, you kind of hinted that you also offer not only with the one-on-one, but you also do some coursework as well. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I offer 2 courses currently, both IEP courses. One is for mental health professionals, healthcare professionals, on how to advocate for their clients with IEPs and how to go to those meetings and make sure their clients are getting the goals and the services and modifications and accommodations they need. And then I also offer the parents' IEP course, the parents and caregivers IEP course, that helps them to learn how to best advocate for their children in the school system, how to make sure that their child's IEP is specialized for their child, how to advocate for certain services, accommodations, and modifications.
Now, I know you kind of alluded to a little bit some of the services that, especially when you're doing like these IEP reviews, is there like a common service that you see that sometimes parents don't take advantage of because they don't even know what's out there?
I don't know if it's a common service that they don't receive, but I think that parents are not aware of everything their children could receive. I think that they listen a lot of times to just the school saying, no, your child doesn't qualify for speech, or they don't qualify for occupational therapy or physical therapy, or they say something to the extent of, well, we don't have the means to cover that service. And parents just say, okay, not knowing that, there's a whole law, the IDEA law, that protects their children to make sure that their children get the services that they're supposed to get. So I don't think it's that they're not getting one specific service. I think there's services across the board that they're not getting the full time for, or just not receiving because they don't know that their child actually qualifies for it.
So a couple more questions before we get you out of here. What is it that you would like, Black families to do if they suspect that their child is autistic?
I would like them to take their child in to either a developmental pediatrician, a child psychologist, or a child neurologist and get their child evaluated to grieve and take their process that they may need to, because they need to understand that it's not going to work if they're not 100% on board, because the parent, especially for those who are under 18, is, a crucial part in their child being successful. And if they don't fully believe or understand or are in denial, then their child is not going to be set up for the success that they could be. So deal with, your emotions and take your time and do what you need to do. But know that your child needs you 100% in for them to be successful.
Perfect. Where can others find you? I know you've talked a lot about what you do. You talked a lot about some of the stuff that you offer from a service standpoint. But if someone's looking, they listen to the podcast, they have a family friend or themselves have a child who's autistic, where can they find you to get some help and some consultation work?
You can go to my website, www.autisminblack.org. You can find me on Instagram at autisminblack. My email is info@autisminblack.org. And I'm also on Facebook at autisminblk.
All righty. I love it. So again, Lunch Learn Community, let's give another round of applause. Again, I think this is her third or fourth time. I know she's probably getting tired of coming here, but I usually have to beg her, right? Because I said, my Lunch Learn Community needs to know about autism. And when I talk about autism experts, right, like how can I not talk to my wife, who's an autism expert, right? So it's only right to get her on the show. It's only right for the repeat guests, because if they're good, they're good. And she's a good one, and she continues to drop gems here for Autism Awareness. Is it Autism Awareness, or what was the
full website for?
No, it's Autism Awareness Month, but it's like Autism and Awareness.
Autism Awareness and Acceptance. They're moving more towards acceptance, which of course autistic individuals want. But I think for a lot of communities, especially Black communities, Hispanic communities, they still need the awareness portion of it, because we all know we can't move to acceptance if we're not aware of something.
Right. So and that's where Autism and Black comes in, to make people aware.
Exactly. And I think for certain communities, we still do need to provide that awareness, but they're moving more towards acceptance because, of course, autistic individuals want to be accepted, and who doesn't want to be accepted? So
You're right about that. So again, Lunch Learn Community, thank you for, sticking with us for another amazing episode. And I'm going to see you guys next week. Maria, thank you for joining here on the Lunch Learn.
Thank you.
Thank you for getting to the end of the show. I am your host, Dr. Davis-Pierre, host of the Lunch Learn with Dr. Barry, and this is another amazing episode that we like to bring to you week after week on betterment of empowering yourself for better health today. If you have not had a chance, please go ahead and subscribe to the show if this is your first time listening. If you already listen and you've already subscribed, make sure to leave me a 5-star review, because your support is absolutely important in keeping the show moving as it is. And if you have not had a chance and you want to check out today's show notes, always head over to lunchlearnpod.com. That is lunchlearnpod, all in one word.com, and you can get the access to my show notes for every single episode, but especially the one you just listened to. And I'm going to see you guys next week. You guys be blessed. Bye.